Ouchie.
Tilt this hat up a little bit.
Desk all prepared.
All right. Everybody there? Hey, how's it going, everybody? I think we're a minute early, but can everybody hear us okay? And see us okay? I'm sure there's some latency.
Yes and yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. Are we ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Official.
It
All right.
just got awkward. Thanks, Kurt.
This is awkward silence. Well, welcome to the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum. We're surrounded by all these fine Land Cruiser specimens here in Salt Lake. Jackson joined myself here to talk about being a trail leader at Cruise Moab. So my name is Kurt Williams. I've been involved in around 20 Cruise Moabs over the years, so only missed a couple. And for the last 10 years, I've been the trail leader for the San Rafael Swell Overnighter. I think our whole goal getting together here today was just to talk about being a trail leader and also let you know it's not that hard to be a trail leader. A lot of people are maybe a little intimidated by the process, but we're going to walk through what it means to be a trail leader, the steps you need to make sure you're doing to be prepared, and how to have a good time.
Yeah, sounds good. Man.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, this is excellent. It's my first time to the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum, and it is everything it's cracked up to be and more. So make sure you come by here on your way home from Moab. My name's Jackson Philby. I'm the president of the Rising Sun, who puts on Cruise Moab. And I'm super pumped to be here with Kurt Williams. I don't even know why he introduced himself. I think he's pretty well known in our circles.
Please.
I've been going to Cruise Moab for, I think, 6 years now. And yeah, like Kurt said, here to run through what it takes to be a trail leader and maybe try to drum up some more trail leaders for future years. If this is your first time at Cruise Moab, just a brief history. The first unofficial run was in 1996. It was just a fun run for our Rising Sun Club. They had so much fun out here, they decided to formalize it, and 1997 was the first official Cruise Moab, and we've been having fun and trying to make it better since. So here we are.
All right. So we're going to cover a few different aspects of being a trail leader, having a successful trail ride, and kicking off, like, what is it to be a good trail leader or a gunner, and what those people are, what that role is. The trail leader is obviously the guy out front. So your responsibility is to successfully, hopefully, get everybody from the start of the trail to the finish of the trail, hopefully without incident. Things happen though, and we're going to talk about what you do when things happen. Those could be recoveries, those could be a medical emergency, and we'll go over those through the course. But also what a trail gunner is, and what is a trail gunner? You got a leader and a
gunner.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes we even have something called a waist gunner, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So gunner is what it sounds like. He's in the back of the pack, but really he's kind of a second leader. So he's in charge of the back of the pack, making sure everybody makes turns at the right point, keeps the leader up to speed on what's going on in the back of the pack. And if something should happen and one of those guys has to stay behind, that's a discussion between the leader and gunner, but that's also your job, is to aid the leader in anything that he might need your help with.
Right. Just kind of keep tabs on the general flow of the entire group too. Yeah. That really helps the trail leader to have a good gunner in the back with good radio communication between the two, so you kind of know the flow of things. We'll get on that a little more. So kicking off the fun nitty-gritty stuff, which is the paperwork. What do we have for paperwork that every trail leader needs to know about and do when they meet with their group in the morning, and even beforehand when they pick up their registration packet at HQ?
Yeah, you bet. I'm going to hop into that really quick, but I wanted to preface this with feel free to fire off a question anytime you want to. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the stream over here, and we'll be happy to answer as we go along. I will ask that you keep them kind of on subject. So we've got kind of an agenda here we're going to work through, and I was going to just briefly touch on the main headings, just to give you an idea if the answer to your question is potentially coming up.
Good call.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about documentation up first. We're going to talk about some new technology we're using this year, the Garmin InReach. We're going to talk about leader preparedness, trail etiquette and safety. Kurt's going to walk Kurt's a master tread trainer. He's going to walk us through some tread lightly stuff. We're going to talk briefly touch on spotting, briefly touch on recovery. We're going to talk about what your driver's meeting looks like at the beginning of the day before you hit the trail. Kind of what's going on throughout the day as you're leading the trail. And then what to talk about once the day's over with. After that, we're happy to hang around and answer as many questions as you guys might have. But yeah, let's kick it off with some paperwork.
Okay.
Everybody loves paperwork.
Yeah. Why don't you show them? You're going to show up to the Cruise Moab HQ the night before you're leading a trail, not the morning of,
right?
The night before, no later than, and you're going to get a packet for the trail ride you're leading the following day. It's very simple. They're going to know who you are and what your group is. So they're going to hand you a packet, and what's in the packet?
Yeah, they're going to hand you a packet. They're going to hand you a toilet with some wag bags, and they're going to hand you a spill kit. And so in your packet is some specific paperwork. We'll have a list of emergency contacts. This is an old sheet, so don't use these contacts, but your packet will have the proper one in it.
A lot of the trails around Moab still have really good cell service, so it's important that you have those and know, maybe give that a look before you go, because a lot of those you're going to be your first line of defense when you're out on the trail.
Right. Yep. All right. So the next thing we'll talk about are your the waivers that you sign and your assumption of risk. And we have two different forms. So we have a form if you're an adult. You can see this one here. So any adult, including yourself and your gunner, on your trail needs to fill this out. So to fill this out properly, it's pretty straightforward. The date up here, print your name here, or have your participants print their names here, sign here, whether they're a driver or passenger. And then after you've got all your participants signed up on here, then you'll sign down here. And we ask that you put your contact information down here in this bottom corner. So that's for adults. If there are kids under 18 on your trail, there's a separate waiver that you need to sign, and you need to fill out you and or your participants need to fill out the front and back of this form.
And that's one per child.
Yes, this form's one per child.
So this is your whole group. You should be able to get everybody on here, and in the normal one, the reverse side would have on there as well, or you'd have multiple sheets. But this one, every single child needs to have, everyone 18 and under 18, sorry, 17 and younger would have a form. So you're going to have a whole stack of those in your packet.
Correct. And to fill this one out properly, it's similar. So this will be parent or guardian, their signature. This will be their printed name. And then you as a trail leader need to sign in and date this. And on the back side, there's the date and same thing. So except for this is the actual child themselves fills out this part. And then you witness it and sign it. So pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and these are an important part for a couple of reasons. One, so the participants know that they're still responsible for themselves on the trip. That's what you're signing is you're assuming the risk. Heading to the outdoors, there is some inherent risk. But the bigger part is, too, we do have an insurance policy through the TLCA as part of this event, but that requires everybody does fill out the paperwork. All drivers and spotter drivers and passengers, those are your only two duties. People like to get cute and write all sorts of fun things, but really ask that they just put a driver or a passenger if they're not actively driving the vehicle, and then of course the children. So it's important that everybody fills those out so that we're covered by the insurance policy that we have in place.
And then we also use all of this for our BLM and National Park and National Forest fee schedules. So we know how many people are on each trail, and that's how much we need to pay for that permitting process. So really important to get this stuff filled out properly.
Yeah, and you're going to see these the morning of the trail ride. If you're a participant, if you're a trail leader, of course, you picked them up the night before at HQ, so you've got these in your possession. If anybody wants to be able to spend some time reading through these are available at the HQ. They're on site at the event. So the night before your trail ride or a day before, you could come and ask to see a copy of that so that you have time to read through and digest what you're signing. I know, for some that's a very important part of the process. So come read one ahead of time. We're not necessarily, that the morning of may be tough for you to get through all that.
You bet. Yeah. So here's another important one. This is an accident reporting form. So should something go sideways on your trail run, this is a good form for documenting the facts of what happened. And that's important for any insurance, insurance, those sorts of things. There'll be a couple other things in your packet. You'll have the permits for your specific trail. And should you run into a park ranger or something like that, and they ask to see it, that will be in your leader packet. And then here's another form. This isn't in your leader packet, but this is another important form we have at Cruise Moab. And this is the safety inspection form. And everyone will have one of these filled out when they run through tech inspection.
Right. And just a quick note about the tech inspection. This mostly for participants, but trail leaders as well. This isn't saying that like every single thing about a vehicle is ready to go for every trail in Moab. This is a precursory look. We do our best to give a quick judgment on the vehicle, but it is your responsibility to show up to Moab with a properly operating vehicle that is safe to use, and keep checking it throughout the weekend too. We're going to be doing trails day to day. If you're doing multiple, some of the tougher trails and you've got back to back, do an inspection on your own vehicle overnight, because you're ultimately in charge of your vehicle and the safety of it. So make sure you're looking that over. Again, like the waiver form, this is available at Cruise Moab HQ ahead of time. Of course, you're going to see it when you go through tech inspection, but we can make this, if you need a copy of this, we could probably email one as well.
Sure.
We got a question? Any questions yet?
Nope. Somebody commented about my Mountain Dew. That's the first soda I've had in like 3 years. So.
Why? This is the third Mountain Dew he's had today. Okay, great.
Cool.
Other things in the leader packet? Are we going to talk about the bathroom, the toilet, porta potty?
Let's talk about that during trail etiquette and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Let's see, what do we got?
We're going on to the Garmin InReach.
The Garmin InReach. So we got some new technology. You're as a trail leader, you'll pick one of these up with your packet. And in previous years, we've used sat phones. This year, we're using the Garmin InReach. We are actually able to purchase all of these for the same cost as renting our sat phones.
So it's a long-term play.
Yeah, long-term play, and you can text message. You don't have to know how to call somebody.
Dial out on a sat phone.
Right,
and cumbersome.
Which is a little bit weird. So this is, if you're familiar with texting on an old flip phone, this will be second nature to you. So we're going to touch on this quickly, but there'll be a card in your trail leader packet that explains some of the function on this. But when you get it, feel free to turn it on and play around with it. So to turn it on, power button's on top. I'm gonna hold that down. It's gonna make some noise. This one was already turned on, so it'll make a noise after you hold it down. Roll over, hit unlock, and then in here, if you need to send a message to headquarters or to another InReach, it's pretty straightforward. That's the center icon. You hit the OK button and hit new message, and that's it. You can type a phone number in there, or you can type another InReach address and type away. We do ask that you keep this relevant. Like don't catch up with your grandma over text with our InReaches, because it does cost money.
There's a cost. Yeah, these are using satellite technology. It's still using the same satellite system, so they're not completely foolproof as far as like getting messages out. They're as good as a sat phone is, in some cases better, because it continues to try to send the message until it goes out. But just know that's not an end all. That's not like a guaranteed communication when you send a text. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're dealing with an emergency situation, that you got multiple means that you're reaching out to people.
So one of the cool things about this is at headquarters we can track every trail. So if we're like, hey, they're running a little late, we can pop open there and see, oh, okay, they must be airing up, or oh man, they're still at Widowmaker, something's broken.
Right.
And this is a great tool. Please, if you're running late, or somebody's broken their truck on the trail, communicate with this to headquarters. I mean, that's what they're there for. These have another function as well. If you are in a very emergent situation, they do have an SOS button. You press that button, and this sends out a signal to local, to speed things up to local emergency services, and they'll figure out through you in communication with this device what kind of EMS they need to send you. Keep in mind that if a helicopter shows up, that's a real situation, and that's a potential. if you hit this button. So this is for very emergent situations. Life's on the line, hit this button.
This isn't, you don't use that because someone has a broken axle and you're hoping somebody at HQ knows somebody that has a burr field. This isn't because somebody doesn't have a matching spare tire. This is life-threatening injuries to participants in your group and or just emergency situations in general. So not vehicle emergencies, that's contact HQ via the text method or via radios or sending someone back. This is life-threatening situations.
Right, and when you send a text, it sends your position. So if you say, hey, we need an early 80 series burr field on Hell's Revenge, enter. Well, we know where you're at. We know we need to bring an early burr field with us. Cool. So I won't go into that any further. But feel free to play with it when you pick it up the night before your trail.
Perfect.
Are we rolling on to
leader preparedness?
Cool.
So this is a big part. You've taken on the responsibility of being a trail leader. We're just going to cover a few of the basics that can help you have a successful ride that day and make sure your participants feel they got some value out of it as well. So one of the big ones is making sure that you're ready to lead that trail. And that could be a few different ways. Do you have a GPS track? Not always required. A lot of people know these trails back of their hand. They've done Hell's Revenge a lot of times. Sure. They're going to follow the paint marks on the ground. But there are awesome books, fantastic guides available online, and just about any Moab trail, you can Google, Fins and Things GPS tracks, and you're going to find a downloadable GPS track. So just be prepared to lead the trail. You know the turns, the start, stop, best places to air up, best places to grab lunch. And another one is having the leader supplies that you've picked up the night before at HQ. That's a big part of being a trail leader. Relevant information about the trail. If you know any local history, any tidbits about the flora and the fauna, some of the different overlooks, good information to have as well. And then the big one is for this event is going to be your meetup locations and times, where you meet your group and the time you meet your group. And we'll talk a little bit about like a driver's meeting and the things you're going to discuss there. But the communication channels and frequencies, making sure you know which trail, which frequency or CB you're using for that trail, and the itinerary and the lineup kind of back to that, when to leave. And I think our plan is, Jackson's replying to the question. Okay. When do we leave? What's the leave time?
On time.
On time, that's right.
Yeah, we don't know if somebody's planning on showing up or if they, split early from Cruise Moab. So leave on time. If you have good knowledge, like somebody says, hey, Tim's running 5 minutes late, that's cool.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
So as a trail leader, you need to be at the meetup location, and all those meetup locations are defined. You'll get that information the night before when you pick up your packet, where you need to meet. Maybe drive by there the night before so you make sure you've got the lay of the parking lot or that side street. Be there 30 minutes before your trail ride departs. That should give you adequate time as your participants arrive to get them to fill out their waivers and their forms and give everybody time to get in. The other thing too is if somebody's running behind, you're going to have them on your roster. It's important that you check off everybody that shows up that morning so that you can also check them out at the end of the day.
We just had a question on that, so I'm not going to answer it straight.
What's the question? Why don't you read it?
So will there be a roster of trail participants?
Absolutely. So go ahead.
But it is new this year.
It is.
It's on Sketch.
Right.
So everybody that's on your trail will be on that trail.
On your app. So make sure you have a device capable of looking at that so you can see, because those are going to be somewhat real-time changes, right? People can go in real time.
That's the nice thing.
So, and I think be flexible, like Jackson mentioned, if someone's running 5 minutes behind, and maybe ask people in your group, hey, does anyone know Tim Johnson, and is he late? Can you get a hold of him? Do we have a way to get a hold of him? But leave on time, because you could run the chance of waiting around for 20, 30 minutes for somebody that's not going to make it. They broke the day before, they went home, got sick, and now you've held up your entire group, and that kind of just puts a bad cadence on the day of getting to lunch on time and getting off the trail so everybody gets back time for dinner, the vendor show, etc.
Yep.
So that's a big one. And then is your truck in serviceable condition? We talked a little bit about this during the tech inspection, but kind of as the leader preparedness, it's more important than anybody that your truck's in good condition.
Absolutely.
You're out front. Your job is to get everybody from A to B. So make sure your truck is in particularly good condition and ready for anything you might encounter. You should know the trail. You should know the obstacles. May not be a bad idea for you to take some of the bypasses just so you don't run the chance of breaking a berth. Let your participants have that fun.
Right.
But you get around, clear the trail, come back, and you're there to really kind of help them guide through and have fun while you do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. As myself as a trail leader, I tend to take a lot of bypasses. Number one is it's not if it's a really difficult obstacle, it's not confidence inspiring if you have to do it 3 times to your participants.
Right.
The other reason is, man, I would look really silly if I broke my truck on an obstacle that I'm trying to coach people up, right?
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of a hit you take sometimes being a trail leader. Is you know, it's your responsibility to stay out in the lead.
Keep the thing moving, keep the convoy moving.
Yep.
One other on the communication channels, they are assigned, and just reiterate those when you have your drivers meeting in the morning and know those. But probably a good idea, know the trails in your general area, the frequency and the CV channels they're going to be on as well. Mm-hmm. So that if you're on Fins and Things, but you're real close to Hell's Revenge, you have the ability to maybe reach out to those guys if something happens, or ask them if they have a spare, because they're going to be the closest nearby, far closer than the HQ guys would be.
Yep. And the main form of communication at Cruise Moab is still CB. As a trail leader, you should have
unfortunately.
Right, yeah. But as a trail leader, you need to have a CB that's capable of communicating with your trail. So if you have to use a handheld, we do ask that you have an external antenna, which they're cheap, really cheap, and you have a way to plug it into power. Those 2 things will keep you functioning for the most part. You know, a nice installed rig is always better, that's well tuned, but at a minimum, external antenna, a mag mount is fine, and power to your handheld.
You can find them at most truck stops. Don't wait till you get to Moab though, because there's not a lot in that regards there. Make sure you have that dialed in ahead of time, and see if you can't meet up with some locals in your area and at least do a radio check. Antennas still need to be tuned, CB ones included, so spend some time on the front end having that ready. Another question?
No, just kind of reading through here, making sure that we're not missing anything here.
Okay.
What's the weight or leading question? Did I miss something up above that? Yeah, let's move on.
Okay.
Maybe they'll respond here. Oh, okay. They're having a kind of side conversation.
All right.
They'll sweat. Let's keep moving.
Okay, so we're going to kick over to trail etiquette. Jackson's going to run with this one.
Yeah, so trail etiquette and safety. So your trail air down areas and air up areas might be different than where you meet up to go onto the trail. And remember, there's a lot of other folks out here using these trails. So keep the entrance or wherever you're parked at clear so other people can get by. And that's also a good time to mosey back and forth across the rigs, you know, take a peek at each rig, make sure that, you know, they're capable for the trail, make sure they're not leaking any stuff, that sort of thing. People may ask you for general advice on airing down. It's not necessarily your responsibility, but if you're comfortable with divulging that information, go for it.
It's not a big secret, but just different vehicles react differently, different air pressures, even different brand of tires, different sizes, of course. So do your best, but just know that like you're not responsible for targeting everybody's ideal pressure. Don't feel that burden's not on you.
So convoy rules. I can talk about convoy rules, but why don't you talk about convoy rules? You've been in more convoys than I have.
I'm a big fan of the slinky method, which is you always have the vehicle in front of you and the vehicle behind you. You've got eyes on them at all times. So I like to say, get to know, to all your participants, get to know 2 people on this trip. Get to know the vehicle in front of you, get their name, you get to know their by name, and the vehicle behind you. Ideally, everybody gets to, really gets to know each other. But when you call on the radio and say, hey, how's everyone doing back there? And they say, oh, I haven't seen the maroon 80 for 10 minutes. Well, there may be 5 maroon 80s on your trail ride, so that doesn't really help you know who's missing and where they're at. But every turn, stop and make sure the vehicle behind you sees that turn, acknowledges that turn before you carry on. And that really helps set a pace for the leader in the front too. The slinky, if everybody waits for the car behind them, you quickly realize, wait, I don't see them in my rearview mirror. I need to slow down.
Sure.
So that really helps kind of move the convoy along. And general convoy rules: don't fall too close. Maintain adequate distance, a safe distance. Don't stop on obstacles. Pull through obstacles. Like sometimes people conquer an obstacle, they want to stop right at the top and get out, and they're fist bumping. They're like proud as can be, and that's okay. Have your moment, but then pull through and get a long ways past the obstacle, because now you've got 20 more trucks that need to come up that same obstacle and have a comfortable landing spot on the top after they make it through to where they can get out and stop.
Yes. Before we started this, I was like, hey, do you know how long a 60 is? And we estimated about 15 feet
Yeah,
for
right.
proper parking space. So if you have 15 trucks, 15 feet, that's 225 feet you need to pull forward as a trail leader. That's what, like 3/4 of a football field, right?
It's a little bit of a length. So yeah, pull through. I mean, set that distance, judge that distance. You don't want everyone so balled up that now you're creating trail conflicts with other users that may be coming the opposite direction. And also you're not forcing everybody to pull off the trail to be able to get out of the way of an oncoming group if they were out there. So pull through to where you can find good clear spots. Just let the vehicle behind you know, hey, hold here for a minute. I'm going to run up, park, and wander my way back.
Right. Yeah. So, and then anytime we're in those situations, it's important, whenever possible, to keep the trail clear so other people can come through, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that
covers it pretty well. Convoy rules, yeah.
Cool.
And maybe define those during your driver meeting in the morning. Just say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Ask that everybody keep an eye on the vehicle in front of them, the vehicle in front of them, behind them, and just also talk about turns. Some trails in Moab still have a lot of ambiguous turns,
Sure.
Looks like it could go either way, some weaves. So make sure you really call those out, that it's your job. It's each participant's job to wait for the person behind them, because you can't do that at the front as the trail leader. And it gets frustrating when people start missing turns because now you've got groups going sideways. So mention it in your driver's meeting in the morning.
All right. So
communication.
We got next here. Yeah. Comms. No.
Yep.
So communication, keep the communication flowing throughout the day. As a trail leader, I like to chatter on the radio a bunch. I've never had anyone tell me to shut up, but it's like on the borderline of that amount of communication.
They wanted to.
Yeah, they probably wanted to, for sure. I'm sure they'd turn their radio down on me. But yeah, I'd rather over communicate than not enough.
Mm-hmm. What about this 3-strike rule? What's that all about?
Yeah, so as a general rule of thumb, when I'm running through the ground rules in the morning, I talk about the 3 strikes are out. So any difficult obstacle that we come across, everybody on the trail gets 3 tries. If they don't make it in 3 tries, they get a strap, they take a bypass. In some cases they end up winching.
Right.
So that keeps everything flowing throughout the day. If you end up on a trail where there's like 5 people and you're all relatively experienced and you decide you want to jack around on something, that's cool, be flexible. But if you've got a big long trail, the 3 strikes you're out rule works pretty good.
Yeah, and your participants will understand that. They get that everybody else is there to have a good time too. They can't spend 30 minutes trying an obstacle, because if all 20 trucks did that, you're at one obstacle all day. So no one's going to be offended by that, but just mention it early on in your driver's meeting that that's what you're going to do. And maybe you're setting up in the case of winching, maybe you've got a recovery truck already set up at the top that's either serving as an anchor or a winch vehicle. So it's just kind of assume that as soon as you try it 3 times, you don't make it, they're there to help you out.
Yeah. I was going to jump back to comms really quick.
Yeah.
One thing that works out pretty well, especially on more difficult trails or even sometimes the really easy trails, is to have separate channels that that the leader and the gunner can communicate on that aren't public to everybody else. Maybe you're talking about reorganizing a truck because somebody's not keeping up, or putting somebody else behind, or whatever that might be. If you're like, right when you get to the trailhead, hey, the trailhead's 146.460. Let's use 146.520, or whatever.
Right.
Whatever.
Between leader and gunner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also helpful, just so you can keep an eye on the tail end of the group, just time-wise. If you've got a chatty group that's talking about all things, Land Cruiser as they mows down the trail, you don't always want to have to break their traffic to figure out where the tail gunner is. So if you've got an alternate means for him to give you updates, it works out really well.
Okay. Dan's keeping us honest here. He's checking up with everybody, posting up some good information.
Mr. Dan Ducey, all right. Dan is the curator here at the Land Cruiser Museum, so he's keeping an eye on us via the camera. He never gets too far away from this place.
Do we have time? We're moving pretty quick. Do we have time for a story?
Tell a story. Let's do it.
So Dan, the first time I met Dan, I was in my 60 on Porcupine, and there was a little ledge, and I just put some off-brand motor mounts in it, and I broke a motor mount. And I thought for sure that it was my front hip. It sounded like something was grinding really bad, yeah. And it was actually Daniel Markovsky was leading it. He came down, he's like, oh yeah, that's a broken motor mount. And then Dan Boothie walks up behind him and rattles off the part number of the motor mount. Writes it down on like a sticky for me so I can order it when I get back to camp.
No surprise.
No surprise.
Dan's wife, Sarah, has told me he wakes up sometimes like muttering, talks in his sleep, 5x5 digit Toyota part number. Just have to nudge him and say, quit thinking about parts, Dan.
Anyways, that was my story.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Hope you didn't feel like your time was wasted.
All right. So
3 strikes, alternate radio channel. We covered that. How about nobody gets left behind?
Right. Yeah. So unfortunately, sometimes things go sideways on the trail. Somebody breaks a burr field or a rear axle, or cuts a sidewall or something like that. The stranded truck and their pilot and the trail leader and gunner need to decide what to do there. Sometimes it's a quick fix and we hold the group up for 15-20 minutes while we swap a tire out. And something like a burr field, sometimes it's best to make sure that they have what they need. We never leave somebody alone by themselves. So maybe the gunner stays with them, right, and the rest of the group completes the trail. But that's up to you. Just remember, on our runs, nobody gets left behind. Yeah, and it could be that they hop in your truck and we come back later and put the truck back together, whatever.
There's generally no shortage of people back at HQ that are willing to go out on a night mission to go rescue a truck. That's when it gets fun. So don't feel like you always have to fix it there on the spot, especially if it means holding up the entire group for an hour or more, or it's a complicated break that you're gonna need some recovery effort. Sometimes that's best done in a smaller group later on. They can go in there with the right equipment, the right folks, the right trucks, and go recover a vehicle. So don't necessarily be afraid to leave a vehicle behind. You just never leave people behind.
Exactly.
Leaving any of your participants behind.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. As a trail leader at Cruise Moab, there's a pretty good chance that there are people more experienced than you and people that are less experienced than you. And know when to ask for help. Know when you're in over your head. And if there's not somebody on the trail that knows, there's a pretty good chance there's somebody back at HQ that knows. Dan could probably even give you the part number for your broken part.
There may be a lot of people with spares. There's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
So your best resource for a broken part that you don't have on the trail to fix is going to get back to HQ and start hunting that part down.
Great use for the inReach.
Right, and sorting it out on the trail is going to be tougher. So do your best. If you can get every vehicle to the end, that's the goal. But don't feel like that's a game ender. If you've got to leave a truck behind, secure it. Do your best to grab any belongings out of it and get those people back to town. How about bathroom breaks?
Yeah,
always the business. Let's talk about the business.
Yeah, so in the driver's meeting early on. Usually, if you want to get an early chuckle out of somebody, we always say men to the left, women to the right during potty breaks, because women are always right. But anyways, that usually gets a good chuckle out of somebody. You have a porta potty as a trail leader. It's given to you with your packet, and you have wag bags. And if somebody goes number 2, they packed that number 2 in, so they pack that number 2 out. Don't feel like you need to carry that for someone.
It's not your job to haul all styles of hazardous waste and material. So they will pack that out, but you're prepared with the equipment to be able to offer that. And make sure you mention that in your driver's meeting in the morning with all your participants, and bring it up a few times throughout the day at lunch. Perhaps even just get it out, have it available for somebody to grab and wander off with, so they don't feel reluctant to ask for it. Maybe that's a little embarrassing thing. Sure. Make sure people feel comfortable. And a lot of these trails do have vault toilets or restroom facilities near the trailhead and or at the end. Some of the fins and things, Hell's Revenge have got vault toilets. So identify those. That's part of being prepared for your trails, knowing where those are, so you can mention that to participants as well. Say, hey, in another 20 minutes, we're going to be at the end of the trail. We're going to be near a vault toilet. So we talked enough about the business. We passed the business.
So speaking of the business,
okay,
no booze.
No booze. That's right.
Yeah. So and we don't mean like the boo kind of booze. There's no drinking on any of our trail runs. Make sure you run that past everybody up front. I don't even carry booze on the trail with me. Right. If something goes awry, I don't want even that responsibility in the back of my truck on a trail run. So
there's a lot of things illegal in Utah, and that's definitely one of them, and for good reason. So no drugs or alcohol on the trail. It's a complete violation of local and state laws, but also just as a safety thing. So that's something you need to make sure you mention in your driver's meeting. I think everybody should know, but reiterate that. And I think everyone should be comfortable with the fact that's not allowed. Save it for camp when you get back to camp and get back to your hotels.
Absolutely. Remember, you're the trail leader, and what you say goes. If somebody slams a beer and throws it out the window on a trail, that's an actionable offense. That's like, hey,
we're sorting this out.
It's time for you to go.
Right.
And that's your call as a trail leader. So you're the boss out there. Anyways,
we won't get to dwell on that one too much. It's an important subject, but everyone gets that.
Don't get in over your head. That's like a big.
That's a tough one.
That's an umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people come out to Cruise Moab, I even tell them this, and maybe it's to my fault, that there's not a better place for them to get a little bit out of their comfort zone, right? There's not a better place for them to do that. As a trail leader, that's probably not the best idea or the best time for you to get out of your comfort zone. So try to know your limits, stick to them, and if you do feel like you're getting in over your head with something, maybe it's a recovery, dude, send a text back to camp. Good chance there's somebody back there that is willing to help out.
For sure. Yeah, and guys in your group too. Don't be, as Jackson mentioned, we're all learning. We learn every time. I learn, fantastic things from participants all the time, different recovery methods, different repair methods. There very well could be someone in your group. So be willing to solicit input. The fact that you're the trail leader up front doesn't mean you need to feel like you have all the burden on your shoulders of being the guy that knows every answer, because it's unlikely you will. It's safe to say there's going to be some folks there that know how to do a burp on an 80 better than you do because you drive a 4Runner, vice versa.
Yep. Be assertive, but be polite.
Right.
And did we talk about? Oh no, that's later on. Be assertive, be polite. Be confident, but stay humble. Where are we at?
Drink water.
Drink water.
Yeah, keeping your group hydrated. This is an important thing to touch on at your driver meeting in the morning and throughout the day. On the radio, at lunch. Mentioned this is a high desert. The temperatures may not be that hot. It could be. Some years we've had really warm temperatures, nearly triple digits. Some years it's been snowing on us, but you're at high elevation. A lot of participants may have come from sea level, and staying hydrated is very important because it's a quick way to verify, ensure that you're going to have a safe, comfortable day, and nobody's going to have to head to the hospital for dehydration, which is so easily solved by just drinking some water through the day. So that's a pretty easy one. It's not your job to carry people's water. They should be self-sufficient, come with their own lunch, right? You don't make lunch for people. You're not required to do that. You're not required to have water. So it's never a bad idea to have plenty of spare water. Everybody should. Sometimes that's for handing to a mountain biker that passes you on the trail.
Absolutely.
Sign a goodwill to, ask them if they need anything. Or if you see a participant in your group that maybe doesn't look like they've been drinking, maybe offer them a bottle of water.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I think we covered trail etiquette and safety pretty well. We're going to get to Dan's favorite subject. I've been seeing your posts.
Dan Busey's been asked about this one too. Okay.
So I say we, but I'm going to let Kurt run with this one pretty good. Tread lightly, and he's going to cover cryptobiotic crust, crust. What is it?
What is cryptobiotic soil, right? Yeah. Cryptobiotic soil is it's actually it's kind of hard one. I'm not an expert on cryptobiotic soil, but we'll talk about it. Moab has a thin crust layer that covers a lot of the ground and sediment and sand around it, and it's a very important organism. I guess it is an organism. Yep. To prevent erosion. So when those areas are broken up and that cryptobiotic soil is disturbed, be it by foot traffic, be it by animals, be it by tires, that can break up that soil and cause erosion. Our job's not here to worry about everything that's ever happened anywhere else. Our job is just to worry about our impact and the current impact now. There's some areas where the travel off the trail by foot is completely appropriate. It's not limited. So, cross-country travel by foot is okay. There are even areas in the greater Moab area where cross-country travel with vehicles is okay. That would be like some of the sand dune areas, the Mickey Dunes. But the trails primarily that we're going to be involved in with Cruise Moab, our job is to keep the vehicles on the trail at all times. It's very important. So when you're pulling even over to allow other vehicles to pass, look and identify areas where there's already an existing white spot in the trail. So we're reducing our impact and making sure you're not leaving tire tracks through previously undisturbed areas. It's a point of contention amongst other user groups that don't always appreciate what we're there doing. So if we can minimize our impact, I think that goes a long ways to satisfying others. And moving on to that, that's kind of a bigger picture tread lightly thing. And if you're not familiar with Tread Lightly, it's a fantastic organization. It's spun off of some of the federal land managers, the BLM and Forest Service. It is a nonprofit organization solely aimed at finding ways and encouraging and educating people to just that tread lightly, reduce and minimize your impact. So Tread Lightly covers, TREAD stands for travel responsibly, respect the rights of others, educate yourself before you go, avoid sensitive areas, and do your part. And you can learn a lot more about Tread Lightly and a handful of ideas and thoughts and points about each of those subjects if you go to the treadlightly.org website. There's about a 40-minute class called Tread Lightly 101. It's like an awareness course that talks a little bit about Tread Lightly, the program, and gives you some good ideas. I would highly recommend, and I would prefer and encourage every trail leader to go through that before they lead their trail, and maybe just mention Tread Lightly. mention to your participants that it's their job throughout the day to stay on the trail at all times with their vehicle. Unless it's an area open for travel by a vehicle, a side trail, a spur, a parking area, their job is to stay on the trail. So driving off trail is strictly forbidden if it's not otherwise legal, right? Yep. So it is legal, and we don't want to give the group a bad name. We don't want to put our permit in jeopardy to be able to host these rides in the future. And as a trail leader, you don't want your group to be known as the one that was the rowdy bunch that was driving everybody. So those are perhaps somebody accidentally drives off trail or pulls off a little too wide and parks in the dirt. You don't need to make a big point of bringing that up in front of the whole group. That could be just a nice teachable moment. That you pull them aside and say, hey, you shouldn't pull this far off the trail. Maybe try and use that as a good opportunity to explain to them what Tread Lightly is about, or why the cryptobiotic soil is important to that area, and how other users might find that offensive.
Absolutely. A nugget that I got from Bill Burke was if people have never seen it before or don't understand why it's important, it's analogous to coral in the sea.
Right.
It's the coral of the desert. You don't mess with the coral because it messes with everything else.
Right. Yep. It's kind of it's an organism that it's hard to explain what it's doing, but it's there and it's doing its thing.
And don't mess with it.
Yeah. If you're a trail leader, maybe if you know where some is, you're at lunch and there's a patch of some undisturbed soil with cryptobiotic soil, and you can kind of see the growing and the discolored top layer of it. Maybe point it out to your group and mention, hey, that's what it is. And it's the common saying in the Moab area is don't bust the crust. Really watch where you're hiking. Use previously disturbed areas. So if you're hiking cross country, follow paths that exist already. Don't start new ones. So maybe mention that to people, even if they wander off to the bathroom. Look for be watching that.
Yeah, definitely something you should touch on in your driver meeting. All right, so next up we have spotting.
Spotting, yeah.
So we're gonna give you a full-on demonstration of how to spot every vehicle at Cruise Moab. Just kidding.
We're not.
Now we're gonna touch on the basics. The main thing with spotting is that the person driving is comfortable with the spotter. So it's up to them. It's not your responsibility to spot every single vehicle on the trail. You can if you want to, but it's not your responsibility. And remember that it's the person's decision when they're driving on what they do. So don't be hard on yourself if somebody bangs a skid plate hard or bangs a slider hard. Another important thing is there's only one spotter, and I am totally okay with being really assertive with this. If somebody else is talking, I'll cut them off, and I'll say one spotter only, please. And that spotter is the driver's call. They get to select their spotter. I like to use big gestures when I'm spotting. Everybody has a different style. The important thing is that you as a spotter and the driver are consistent and understand each other.
You've identified those ahead of time.
Exactly. So if there's weird things that I do that that I know are weird, I might communicate those up front. If we're doing a trail and I know that somebody's probably going to struggle with something, and this is a weird one that I think I got from Bill Burke, was turn your rear locker on. That's the sign for rear locker, evidently.
Okay,
I don't know.
That's a good one.
But that's a weird one, and
I wouldn't know.
I think like some people do this. Just
right.
Make sure you're consistent and that they know what you're saying.
Okay.
I try to stay nonverbal. Try to do everything without talking, and be very clear. So when you tell somebody, hey, back up, say back up 3 feet or back up 10 inches.
Don't leave it open-ended.
Don't leave it open-ended.
Be finite in your measurements, finite in how hard you want them to hit the throttle. Use finite numbers, not, hey, back up a little bit.
Exactly. And I'm always looking for reverse lights. If I tell somebody to back up on an obstacle, I always want to make sure that they're back in gear before they touch the gas or release the brake. Because that can get weird really quick. Yep.
Have a rollaway situation. They lose gear, foot slides off the brake, and they don't have it in gear. Now you've got a vehicle moving wildly.
Yeah. The safety word is always stop as loud as you can if there's something goes sideways. Mm-hmm. We try to stay away from things like whoa or oh, hey.
Yeah. I'll stop.
Stop.
Make it loud. Make it clear. Everybody in the group, all the people around that. Usually, when you're spotting, that means there's people out on foot. So make sure they all know that as well, that when we call all stop, everybody needs to quit talking, quit moving,
Cool. I think. You feel good about that one?
That's a good one. One other thing on spotting is not necessarily just spotting the vehicle, but as a trail leader, it's a good time for you to remind everybody else that's on foot that they need to be in a safe position as well.
Sure.
So there's a vehicle moving, there's a spotter calling that out. Make sure that people on foot are in safe places. What happens if the vehicle rolls? What happens if they do knock it out of gear and roll back on an obstacle? You need to make sure vehicles are clear and participants are out of the way. So just use best judgment. They're there to assume their own risk. They know what they're doing.
Right.
But help remind them through the day that, hey, stay out of the way. They're getting too close to obstacles while people are working their way through.
Absolutely. One that's classic for that is cliffhanger, right? When everybody's going back up,
yeah,
everybody's just like
out,
smashed in against. Yeah. Anyways, let's see. Recovery. You wanna?
Yeah, we'll kick off on recovery. There's a good chance and a very high probability that you may have to do a recovery on your trail. Not every trail does. Some of them go smooth, completely zero fare, but other times you have a recovery. And in a broad definition, recovery could be about anything. Jackson and I were talking about this before, our own definitions of recovery. And for me, it's kind of anytime the vehicle is not moving unassisted on its own with one driver. So even if you're on a strap, that's a recovery, right? But even if the vehicle's not moving unassisted, so it's got a flat tire and you're working on it, you're kind of in recovery mode. It's a little loose thinking when you think about it that way, but from a trail leader aspect, you need to say, okay, we're in recovery mode. And what do we do when we're in recovery mode? What does that mean?
Yeah, we're problem solving.
Right.
I always, as a trail leader, anytime I get out of my truck, I have my gloves on. Okay. That's just a general rule of thumb. But yeah, in recovery mode, we're trying to figure out why this truck won't move under its own power. Whether it's a cut tire, like you said, it's hung up on a rock, it's got a broken part. Mm-hmm. You know, we're in that mode where we're walking around the truck, putting a plan together, and understanding why the truck won't move.
Yeah, and while a plan is a group effort, get input from the driver. It's his vehicle. What does he want to do to fix that? How does he want to get out? Does he want to try and self-recover by, perhaps stacking some rocks or doing a jack and cast, lifting the vehicle up and putting stuff underneath it? Or is it winch time? So while it's a group effort, much like spotting, one person's in charge. So when it comes time to actually putting tension on a winch, moving the vehicle via the use of a strap, or just doing some more delicate spotting, you've lifted the vehicle up and stacked rocks underneath it, you're right back to one person's in charge, one person's having communication with the driver, and everybody else is in a safe place. They need to be adults themselves to make sure they're out of the way, but you can help remind them, that this is going to happen. We're going to be winching. This vehicle's going that way. I need you out of there.
Exactly. Yep. Let's see.
We talked about putting a plan together. We mentioned this early on. You don't necessarily have to get every vehicle off the trail. It's not your job is to get every person off the trail, not every vehicle. I know we talked about that earlier, but we'll mention it again when we're in recovery. Sometimes the best method is call in backup, and that backup can come later that evening. So communicate that with HQ via the inReach, or just even when you get back to town, mention, hey, we had to leave this vehicle behind. Here's why. Here's where it's at. Make a point with the inReach device so that we know where the vehicle is, and pass that on, and then work with the driver to go back and get that vehicle.
Absolutely.
Some recoveries are going to be, again, as we mentioned, best done later on that evening or without the whole group there trying to help, because it could be really slow. Maybe you're limping that vehicle out, dragging it out. Could be really slow. No sense holding up your entire group. It's going to take away from their enjoyment. Get them all off the trail, and we'll work to go get the vehicle.
Exactly. And safety.
Right.
That's cute. I mean,
personal protection. That's going to be gloves, glasses. If you're using a grinder, beating on things with a hammer. That's making sure you got closed-toed shoes if you're working around heavy tools. And personal safety gear, particularly with winching and straps. Anytime you're using big dynamic devices and tools, make sure you're being safe. So know how to use those ahead of time. We're not going to be able to cover how to safely winch in this little webinar. We're going to just cover the fact that you need to know how to safely winch if you're hooking your winch to somebody.
Exactly.
And ask that your participants do the same thing.
And I'll always inspect your gear or the gear that's being used. I always say, use their crap. Unless their crap's sketchy, then use your
own. Yeah.
But inspect your rigging. Safety.
Perfect.
All right. So we've talked through all that stuff. So let's talk about the driver's meeting.
Yeah, we've touched on a handful of them, but let's just start to finish. So what do we do? We show up in the morning.
Yep, we show up in the morning. We're, as trail leaders, we're at least 30 minutes early to departure time.
You already have your packet.
Yep.
Pick that up the night before, not the morning of. Don't go hunting it down that morning. That's stressful for the guys at HQ, but it's also going to be stressful for you because you may not find anybody that has all your needed paperwork.
It's also nice as a gunner to be there 30 minutes early, and you guys can decide on what you're going to tackle. Sometimes the trail leader will be given a speech, and the gunner's handing out forms for everybody to sign. You guys get to decide on what you're doing, but yeah. So let's run through what that looks like. So I generally run through introductions. I'll introduce myself. I'll introduce the gunner. I usually point out my truck, talk a little bit about my truck, and then kind of think of a topic that everybody can talk about. Usually people like to talk about their trucks. So I'll say, hey, I'm Jackson. I'm the leader of this trail today. I have a 94 FCJ80. It's got a little lift on it and tires, and it's locked, and it's a fun truck. But yeah, why don't you all tell me a little bit about yourself? We'll start there, and everybody gets introduced, and it gets the names driving back and forth.
Yeah, you don't need to remember everybody's name, but at least give everyone the opportunity to introduce themselves, maybe say where they came from, how they got to Cruise Moab, and what they're driving. Let everybody build up a little rapport so people can kind of open up, get people talking, get chatting. Nothing's worse than a trail where nobody talks to each other. You're the trail leader, and the only voice on the radio ever is you. That's kind of boring. So get people talking.
Yep. We didn't cover this before, but in some circumstances we'll have a waist gunner, and that's like waist as in like belt waist,
not like waist,
not like trash.
Yeah.
So you'll put a waist gunner in the middle. Like if you have 20 trucks, it's tough to communicate all 20 trucks. And in some circumstances, the trail might be busy enough that you guys actually need to break up a little bit. Might have to split them up by 20 minutes or something like that. And so you'll assign a waist gunner. Usually somebody's willing to throw their hand up and say, hey, I'll take care of that. If that's the case, if you have a big trail, it might be something to cover early. Say, hey, this is a busy trail. This is fins and things, and we have 20 trucks, which is a ton of trucks. Is anybody comfortable being a waist gunner, or splitting the group in half if we need to? And usually somebody will throw their hand up.
And that waist gunner's job, as Jackson mentioned, maybe it's to take over the leading job if you have to split the group into two because of size, but also radio communications. Sometimes you get far enough out, even staying in good order and good convoy practice, you still get enough distance that the radios may get tough to bounce from the front all the way to the back. Geography, you get into slot canyons or some of the narrow stuff. So the waist gunner could just be a dedicated person that offers to kind of relay messages to the back in the event he doesn't hear it every time. So just kind of makes a good practice of saying, did you copy that one? Or if he doesn't hear the rear copy a message, he passes it along. That way, everybody else in the group isn't confused about who needs to pass that information to the rest of the folks in the back of the group. So it could just be as simple as helping with communication.
So generally speaking, this happens after the air down process. It could happen before the air down process. I mean, that's kind of your call. You may have this meeting at a different spot than the actual air down. So, you'll need to figure that stuff out, whatever works good for you. During the air down process, as a leader, I like to walk around and look at the trucks, get an idea, if we're, running cliffhanger and somebody shows up in a stock, third gen Tacoma.
Right.
I'm like, hey, you still got time to get back to camp and get a different trail.
Yeah,
unless you really want to destroy your pickup today.
Yeah.
Or you might say, we're going to be dragging that person all day if they come with. So, it might be a good time to turn them around. So they go through, all the trucks go through one tech inspection on Wednesday or Thursday usually. And then people rally their trucks Thursday and Friday. On Saturday, there may be something, broken that they don't know about.
Something new.
Yeah, something new. So it's a good idea to peek around at the trucks while you're moseying around and people are airing down. You're going to be at your meetup spot 30 minutes early. Great time for you to prepare, get aired down, that sort of stuff. What else? Go.
Comms. Identify comms. This is in your driver's meeting. You've already, what the comms are for your group, the assigned CB, and if you're going to dedicate a ham frequency for those ham users in the group, make sure that's broadcast to the group so everybody's very clear on that. Maybe even do a front-to-back radio check. Start at the beginning and work your way all the way to the back on the tail gunner. If anyone's having radio troubles, it's certainly possible. We ask that everybody has an operating CB as part of their tech inspection, but things can happen. Coax gets ripped off, antenna gets ripped off a roof. Just make sure if you identify anybody that doesn't have a working radio, maybe even ask in your driver's meeting, hey, does anybody not have a working radio? You're not going to have to go home, but we're not going to put you towards the back of the group, or we're going to make sure you have somebody maybe right by a waist gunner or right behind the trail leader so that the person without a radio is always within your eyesight, so you're not worried about them missing a turn. So make sure you identify that. How about emergencies? Something happens on the trail. We all keep our fingers crossed nothing does, but it can happen. So what do we do in an emergency?
Yeah, so as the leader, I mean, you have a certain responsibility to the group. One of those is not necessarily being the hero. We have the inReach, and that's a good tool, and hopefully it works. We all cross our fingers the inReach works, but it's not the end all be all. So you need to be prepared on, you know, hey, if we need to get out of this trail quick, it may be a good idea. Like if you're running a confusing trail, say like Dome Plateau, you know, it's confusing back there. You may want to take a quick peek at Google Maps and say, oh, okay, there's a good
alternate ways out.
Yeah, know some alternate ways out. You know, ham radio. If you've got a ham radio, another good device that, you know, might help you out, but may not always be there. So, you know, prepare yourself the best you can for those situations. But at the end of the day, we all hope that emergencies never happen when we plan for the worst.
But yeah, be prepared. So in your driver's meeting, it's a good idea to maybe mention that you have the inReach. Let people know that this is here for your safety. This is here for us to help. Ultimately, they are there, you're there for the responsibility of themselves, but you have this device to help. So let people know, hey, if you're not feeling well or you're getting dizzy or, you know, something happens, do come mention that to me and invite them to come contact you as the trail leader. You're not there, as Jackson said, to be the hero. You don't need to be a medical professional and answer all their questions. But if somebody is having an issue throughout the day, let them know you're there to receive that message and pass that along to the best of your ability. Again, there's no guarantee that this information always gets out because we're relying on satellite technology, but you try.
Yeah, right. And you brought up a good point there at the beginning at this meeting, and you said this as well, that I always throw the question out there, hey, are there any medical professionals here? And it's not their obligation to answer or do anything in an emergency, but I always say, hey, if there's a medical professional here, raise your hand. If you don't feel comfortable raising your hand, you can come and let me know in private, and just so you know.
And maybe ask them if they would be comfortable, if a situation does arise, could you point someone to that person? Again, they're not obligated to provide any medical care necessarily outside the scope of their expertise or in the location you're at. But I've had, in my experience, through a lot of different groups and having the same driver's meeting process, if you do have somebody that's a medical professional, usually they're willing to say, yes, I am, and yes, people can come chat with me. You're still going to reach out on the inReach. You're still going to go through every form of communication you can. You're going to try every method, but knowing somebody ahead of time before you're waiting until an accident happens is a good idea. So identify any emergency personnel that may be there in your group.
Yep. And make sure you tell people that it's not necessary to let the entire group know that they're having an issue.
Right.
Tell them that you're comfortable with them coming up and saying, hey, this is going on.
Pull me aside or pull the medical professional aside if that situation occurs.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. They don't need to make it a big group thing. They don't have to say it on the radio.
Right. Yeah. All right. So during this meeting, I generally give an overview of the route we're going to take and what that entails, and try to give them a rough idea of what time we're going to eat lunch.
People like to know. That's always the question. The first question on the radio is, when's lunch, right?
Exactly.
What time's lunch?
So it might be a good idea if you want to pull up Google Earth, see where there's a good spot to have lunch. There's a lot of people, if this is your first time leading a certain trail, there's probably a lot of people that have led that trail before that could give you advice on where to have a lunch spot at. Mm-hmm. So yeah, keep that in mind and try to keep things moving so you hit that on time. We talked about this before, but
tread lightly.
Yeah, up front, talk about cryptobiotic soil, talk about tread lightly, talk about staying on the trail.
Talk about what you're going to do if you encounter other users. Not a lot in the Moab area that you could run across equestrians, but actually this year, now that we're the Rim Rocker Trail, there are equestrian users on horseback that use those areas. So talk about what you're going to do if you encounter a horseback rider. What are you going to do if you encounter a mountain biker on the trail? Who has the right of way? It's generally always easier for the vehicle to come to a complete stop and maybe even turn off the motor in the case of equestrian, or in the case of mountain bikers or hikers, just stop and let them move around your vehicle so you're not trying to pass a mountain biker on a particularly narrow part of trail. So talk about those items as well first thing that morning.
Yep.
Roll call. We got a question. Looking here. Roll call. You're going to have your Sketch app. So you should have a very current list of everybody that is planning to be on your trail ride this morning. So we talked about you're not there to make sure every one of them makes it to your meeting spot. They have some responsibility to get there. So leave on time, plan on leaving on time, but do a roll call. That roll call is important for a couple reasons, because you want to make sure you start the day and finish the day with the same amount of people, so nobody gets left behind on accident. It can happen. It's, somebody can accidentally miss a turn and nobody even notices. So maybe do a roll call in the morning through using your schedule as your list, but you also verify that against the waiver as everyone signs in. Just make sure you run through that. That's a good way to just quickly learn everybody's name or call out their name. And then at the end of the day, when they come off the trail, so I like to use the waiver. Everybody sign that so you can run through the waiver real quick, especially for everyone that's listed as a driver, just at the end and just do a quick roll call, or if you feel comfortable, everyone there, you could do it in your mind, or just count the number of vehicles too, so that you start the day and end the day with the same number of vehicles.
So you have a good question here.
Yeah.
How often do you do breaks if we aren't stopped for any other reason?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say use your best judgment. There's no rule that says, hey, we need to take a 5-minute break every hour. I'd say just see what the cadence of the group is. If you're running ahead of time and you're a smaller group, you can certainly afford time-wise to stop more often, let people take photos, set up a group shot with all the vehicles. But if you're on some of the longer trails, you got to keep things moving through the day and kind of police that. But I'd say just invite people to stop whenever they need to. If you're working on that convoy rule and the slinky rule, then the system works. When the vehicle in front of them notices they're not there, they're going to come to a stop till they catch up. So everyone will have their time to take a break.
And then be mindful that once one person gets out of their truck, it's like everybody's going to get out of their truck.
So the group dynamic.
If there's something going on with your rig and you need to hop out really quick, you might just climb on the radio and say, hey, I'm just going to check out a quick noise. Please stay in your trucks. We're going to mosey on here in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. And if you do have those stops, both at lunch and even at the air up stop in the morning, lay out a time. Hey, we're going to stop here for our air up. We're going to be here for 15 minutes, and then we're going to hit the trail. So, when you hear my engine start up, that's when it's time for you to also be in your vehicle, but call out an exact time. Lunch, we're stopped here. We're going to be here for 1 hour, guys. That means at 12:15, we're going to be keys on, ready to roll. Bathroom stops. Hey, guys, looks like we've got some people that need to do a bathroom break. That's great. Let's make it a 10-minute one, so everybody be back and ready to roll in 10 minutes. That way it's not open-ended that people think, oh, we're just kind of hanging out. They don't always know how much longer the trail is. They don't know how many more obstacles you have to get through. So don't let that stress you as a trail leader. Just make it very clear we only have about 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here to stop.
Yeah. So we beat that one up pretty good. So we rolled through tread lightly. You can roll through the trail etiquette and safety. We just talked about
we did,
yep. Roll call, we talked about that. Ground rules.
Kind of back to the no drinking and driving, no drugs or alcohol on the trail, legal licensed drivers.
I usually let the group, when we're in a circle and we get done introducing ourselves, let the group establish the ground rules. And if nobody within the first couple things says no drinking, I'll bring it up. But generally, if you let them establish the ground rules, they'll come up with a no drinking thing on their own, kind of get some group participation in there, some buy-in maybe. And it gets people talking.
Right.
Yeah, so throughout the day, and we kind of just touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, we did a little bit. Encouraging communications on the radio. So just chatting with people, making sure everyone's having a good time, making sure they know that they're welcome to talk on the radio. The radio is not just for official, hey, where are you, or left turn communications. It's also for people to kind of chit chat and have fun, which is why we talked about the leader and the gunner having a separate radio channel, identifying that, and that's on their end if they want to do that, so that they can talk about where the group is or logistics per se, while the rest of the group can chit chat. But do be mindful that this is a family-friendly event. So when you're talking on the radio, everybody can hear. So there's children along on the group, and I'd say just in general, keep it PG. So make sure anything you say on the radio is proper, and keep it clean, keep it respectful.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Hydrated. We did touch on that one about keeping hydrated.
Yeah, you really need to beat that into your folks, especially, folks aren't used to, there's a lot of folks coming from all around the United States, Canada, everywhere. Mm-hmm. Some of them aren't used to this like really arid environment. And so, they're used to their like 1 Coke a day kind of thing. Just beat it into them. Water.
Right.
So yeah, keep that going.
We just nailed the announced departure times at all stops. We kind of talked about that with the bathroom breaks. The timely question. Again, just name your stops, say how long you're going to be there, and when you're planning to take off. Use that for your lunches, all your bathroom breaks, and when you're kicking off in the morning.
Yep. All right. What do we got there? Yeah, keep it light and fun. As a trail leader, you need to be assertive sometimes, but you need to be polite. But everybody's there to have a good time. So are you. So
have a good time.
Yeah, have a good time.
I think it sounds like a lot that we've got. We're giving you this whole massive list of things, but so many of these are just like intuitive and they just kind of fall into place. have a good driver's meeting, talk about those times when you're starting and stopping, talk about what you're going to do in the event of emergency, but really it's just going to go smooth and it's a really easy process. Don't be intimidated to be a trail leader because we're talking about all this stuff. The whole goal here is to actually make you not intimidated to offer up to be a trail leader.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on to the follow-up meeting in the air up spot.
Mm-hmm.
So your air up spot may or may not be the same as your air down spot.
Maybe you don't air up, maybe you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Not all trails need it.
Yeah, so maybe you're just going to cruise into town, aired down, and that's, for the most part, okay. Same rules apply. Keep the trail clear in case somebody needs to get past you. I like to discuss, like kind of like the positives and negatives of the day if people are willing to throw their input out there. As a trail leader, I like to do this game. And Daniel Markowski games. Daniel Markowski passed this one on to me, where I get a couple of cheap items. Maybe they're stickers from vendors, a shackle or a pair of gloves or something like that.
Okay.
And it's a good one to get the kids involved. And it's whoever picks up the most trash.
That's great.
Gets the pick from my small thing of prizes. So that's a really fun game. The kids take it super seriously, and it keeps them engaged throughout the day, so they're not just like passed out in the back of the truck.
So you announce this at the driver's meeting in the morning,
Yeah.
invite everybody to pick up trash, which is great. So we want to leave all these areas we visit better than we find them, so don't leave any trash behind. Not only our own trash, very important we haul ours out, but anything you find along the way. So that's a creative way to get people involved and hauling it out.
We had a kid, it was crazy last year. Some kid, I had no idea there was that much trash on the trail.
He found it.
Oh yeah, he was scavenging for it too.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Airing up.
Yeah.
It's not your job to air everybody up. So don't think because you're the trail leader, you need to have some massive compressor system or some CO2 system capable of airing up your entire group. They are there for the responsibility of themselves. They should have planned, hopefully, to have some means and mode to air up, or can ask somebody in the group, or they're willing to drive into town, find an air up station, depending on those trails.
And it's a good idea if somebody comes up to you and asks you what pressure they should be running on the trail early on in the day, one of your responses might be, do you have a way to air back up?
Correct. Yeah.
And it's probably okay to have them lower their pressure a little bit and make sure it's going to be safe to drive afterwards.
Right.
Or early on say, oh yeah, that's fine, I can give you an air up. If it's one person, it's up to you.
Yeah, you can help as many people as you want. Maybe ask if others have compressors or big air systems on their vehicles, if they'll help air people up. But it's not your obligation to air everyone up. Also, I think in that follow-up meeting is you need to tell people this concludes our trail ride and you're free to go at this point. Like, we're not going to convoy necessarily back to town. Everybody from this point forward, that's how you get to Moab, is take a ride on this road, and you can leave at your own pace. You can stop, you can hang out here. Because sometimes you get to the end of the trail and everybody's high-fiving, they've all had a great day, people have met each other. Well, don't think that everybody needs to hang out for that 30 minutes while those guys do want to chat. That's fine, they hang out, but conclude the trail and thank everybody for being part of it, and note down any issues if people have, issues arise.
I'm usually the last one to leave that spot.
That's a good call.
So
part of the don't leave anybody behind.
Exactly. And I usually, during the air up, will mosey around and look at people's trucks. It's a good idea to tell people to look their trucks over. They might have banged something really hard throughout the day because they're about to go from trail speed to highway speed. And it's a good idea to tell them to look over their trucks.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I don't think that
covers it. I think
we flew through that, man. That was good.
It's pretty good. What time we did, a little over an hour, so we're good. We're about 70 minutes. That's spot on where we planned.
Okay, Dan had a good comment here. Remind timid drivers to ask for a spot if they're uncomfortable with the situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Dan. I think in the driver's meeting, do mention that hey, as a driver, it's your job to let us know when you need a spot. Not every driver needs a spot on the same obstacle. Some people want to try it on their own with no spotter, but make sure they know that they are welcome and encouraged to ask for a spotter at any time, and make it so it's not a big affair. It's not an ego thing to ask for a spotter at all. I mean, I always prefer to have a spotter if I can. It's, if you can stay in the vehicle, and for your participants too, let them know it's encouraged, but it's your job to ask for one because I can't always know when you want one.
And kind of along that same situation, if you've got someone who is timid or is driving extraordinarily slow, maybe somebody just bought a truck that's got some Marlin dual cases in it and they're driving down Dome Plateau in low
1 mile per hour.
Yeah. So remind people to stick with the pace. if you have somebody that's a little timid and driving a little slow, a lot of times they'll speed up if you put them behind you as a leader. New people tend to kind of gravitate towards the leader. They're the person they put their trust in if there's nobody else on the trail they really know. And so they'll feel a little bit more comfortable going your speed if they're right behind you. Another thing is if you've got somebody in a truck and they just bought that truck or it's new to them, putting them behind a more experienced driver with the same or similar platform can help them along quite a bit too.
And just watching tire lines and spotting lines as they go through obstacles, that's really helpful. Get, like Jackson said, somebody new in an 80, it's helpful to follow somebody that's been driving one for a long time, see the line that they would take. They're not required to follow them. They're not required to make sure that person gets through, but it's just helpful. So just think of little ways like that you can help new folks to the event get through.
I don't think we have anything else.
Ask questions. We're here.
Yeah. Any questions?
A lot of chit chat. I see a lot of chatter, but where's the questions?
Dan's just stealing our job by answering all the questions.
He's getting it done. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Good work.
This means we get to drink cold beers sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
let's give it a couple minutes. Anything else we need to talk about? There's the new Sketch app this year. If you're signed up and registered for Cruise Moab, you know all about it already, because otherwise you couldn't be signed up.
Is it any kind of violation? Since nobody's asking any questions, we should give them some time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
What if I unplugged this thing and we just walked around with a camera?
Totally.
Is that cool?
Totally.
Would you guys be cool with that?
Everyone want a quick walkthrough of the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum?
Oh, are you guys sending this out in some written format before the event?
Well, this video will be available to watch in perpetuity, right? This will be around forever. But as far as the things we've touched on, none of this will be like a start to finish. However, all of them will be in your trail packet. You're always welcome to email myself, and I'm going to presume you can get a hold of Jackson. Social media, email, I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm at Cruiser Outfit on Instagram or Kurt Williams on Facebook. You can ping me a message if you have a question. But I think the answer to that is the video will be around forever, but like there's not going to be a written document of a start to finish. This is just our little talking points.
If I can figure out
chicken scratch.
If I can figure out, I'm like super. If you guys saw my YouTube channel, you would understand that I'm super new to this whole thing because it's super lame. I have like 4 followers or whatever. But if I can figure out how to like mark it, like little hash, some videos have little hash marks on them.
Right. Tag them.
Yeah, tag them. If I can figure that out, I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So that'll be helpful, hopefully. But yeah, let's pick this thing up. I think I've got enough battery. Yeah, I got lots of battery. Let's pick this thing up and walk around.
Okay, we'll do a couple minute, little quick wander.
Whoa, try not to trip.
So do you have to take the laptop with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
Still here. Immediately behind us, Jackson, all over the place with that.
Sorry.
Immediately behind us and off to Jackson's right.
Maybe it'll be easier if I just carry this around.
I think so.
Carry the whole tripod around.
Yeah, just maybe close it.
Yeah.
We got a heck yes. We got a forever. I don't know if one refers to.
I think your statement on. Can everybody hear Kurt okay still? We're not facing the camera. Give me a thumbs up or something. Are we still good? Does it ever come up that someone had to be booted out of a group on the trail? Okay, cool. We sound good. I've never had to boot anybody off the trail. Sorry, this is kind of weird because it's opposite. Turn it the opposite way. Kind of feeling dyslexic here.
I've never had to boot somebody. I've had to ask people not to be a driver anymore, maybe have somebody else drive their vehicle, and they were receptive of that, maybe reluctant but receptive. They understood why it needed to happen.
Yeah. I've had to have one-on-ones with people before, but I've never had to boot anybody. Generally, everybody's pretty good.
Yeah, they're there to have a good time.
Yep. Don't let that concern keep you from being a trail leader. So this is a cool truck.
We're talking about this truck?
Yeah, let's talk about this truck.
So we've officially concluded our trail leader webinar. We're going to do a quick brief walkthrough of the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum. This truck behind me, this is a very special truck. This is a AT44. It's a Hilux, but as you can see, it's equipped with 44-inch tires. And this truck, about this time last year, was departing for a trip to cross Greenland. So we drove this truck from the southern tip of Greenland, from the coast, all the way to the northern coast. basically across the ice field, the glacier there, the polar ice cap. So this is now on display at the Land Cruiser Museum, one of the newer vehicles here, though there's quite a few new ones. So even if you've been, you need to come back. Let's wander down this way.
Right.
So here we have the rest of the Expedition 7 fleet, and you can learn.
Let me get it at a different angle.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm a terrible cameraman.
It's horrible. This is the Expedition 7 fleet, and you can learn all about it at expedition7.com. And these vehicles were all part in their own way, some all of them, some small parts of a global journey taking Land Cruisers and the Hilux to all 7 continents. So this Hilux, in addition to crossing Greenland, the first crossing, north-south crossing by vehicle of Greenland, also went to the South Pole. So that truck has been some pretty amazing places. And the rest of the E7 fleet's been part of that in different ways. And when we get down here to Fernway, this truck has been to all 7 continents. So this truck is one of the only 4-wheeled vehicles and the only 4-wheeled Land Cruiser that's been on all 7 continents and crossed 6 of those, as much off-road as possible. There were obviously some long road sections, but quite an amazing journey. So you can learn about that at expedition7.com. So we'll kind of finish there. Let's wander back down the 40 row here. Just do a shot down.
Heck yeah.
Okay, well, looking okay. So this is one of my favorite views of the museum, and I hope the camera does it justice. I think it will. This is the 40 series row. So represented here is just about every 40 variant made. There's still a few always missing and still some oddball ones out there in different markets, but you go all the way from 40s and wrap all the way around to 47s. There's a 4-door Bonnarante in there. You've got all the short wheelbase, mid wheelbase, and the trucks and LV wagons. You got both long and short bed trucks and the LV. Some really cool soft top, JDM variants. And these come from all over. There's trucks here from, of course, the United States, Venezuela, Colombia, Japan. I know I'm missing a few, certainly Canada. So there's some awesome vehicles here in the 40 row. Let's go to the 70 row.
Way better in person.
There's some 60s in the 70 row too, but they're all awesome.
Dan and it's Dave, right? The other fellow? Dave that works here?
Dave, yeah.
They let me walk around for about an hour and a half and drool all over these things.
They're definitely drool worthy. The museum's open to come visit. There are hours are posted on the website there. You can call, make an appointment, or just stop in during normal hours. So this is the 70 series row, the 60s, and there's a 55s down on the ends. This is kind of the wagon row.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick.
Okay.
We have a good question that I think we should answer.
Trail leader?
Yes.
Okay.
What about non-participants who want to tag along on the trail?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm going to say that I don't know Cruise Moab's official policy on that. My official policy is you do not have the right to tell somebody they can't enjoy a public trail. So they have the right to be on that trail as much as we do. While we're permitted, we're legally, officially permitted, insured to use that trail, that does not grant us exclusive use of that trail. So I would say you just use your best judgment. Don't let them necessarily detract from your experience, or the experience of your participants, but you can't ask them, hey, go do a different trail. You can maybe politely say, hey, why don't you play through our group? We're going to let you out ahead of us and move on.
That's how I've handled it in the past. Is,
let them get ahead of you.
Let them get ahead of you.
They're one car. Just invite them politely to, hey, why don't we all pull over and let you work ahead?
Yep.
If they're reluctant and they want to hang out at the back of your group, I'd say you just mention that to your trail gunner to say, hey, this guy's going to hang back here. We're not responsible for him any more than we're responsible for anybody else. So
and if a ranger comes up, it's okay to explain to him that they're not with you.
He's not on our permit, so he's not one of the numbers of our group, because these groups are capped. This permit caps the number of vehicles you can have. So yeah, probably important to mention that. Okay,
cool.
Good question. If you have any more, keep asking, because we'll stop anytime and answer them. Otherwise, we'll continue on. Those 70, the wagon row, you got 55, 60, 61, 62, and just about every 70 series in existence. There are a few that are missing from the museum collection. We know they're missing, and I know Dan and David and Greg are actively working to find those ones, and there are people hunting them down. So if you know of a cruiser that isn't in here, maybe mention it. Send an email. Dan would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it. Can certainly pass that along as well. So some really cool 70 models, everything from a 70 proper all the way up to 79. So we kind of have the full range.
I got about 15 minutes of battery power, just to give you a heads up.
Well, we're not going to last that long. We're only going to we're going to hit one more row here.
Just saying, you're getting a little wordy. That's all I'm saying.
We can't show you everything. You got to get here and see it for yourself. how about we wander over to the final row here, and we'll kind of kick it off. We got the big wagons here. So we got everything from the 80 series, the 90 series, the 100 series, all the way down to a 200 series. This is a really cool one on the end. Jackson's going the opposite direction. That's okay. He can go this way. We got a VD J200. So this has got the 1VD FTV. It's the twin turbo diesel that's in the 200 series. Really cool. And then we've got kind of the Toyota DNA, but not quite always Land Cruiser road. Won't get too deep in the weeds on that one, but you've got the Q Series truck on the end. It's kind of like the great uncle of the Land Cruiser, maybe properly the grandfather of the Tundra. So that's a big full-size Toyota truck down there on the end. We've got like the Delta Mini Cruiser, the Blizzards. These are kind of a little bit of Land Cruiser DNA. You can see they tried to make them look a little FJ40-ish, but they're not quite Land Cruisers. They don't say it anywhere on there. And then kind of some other neat ones, some race vehicles. There's a custom 4-door, and then the fire trucks. Those are really cool. Why don't we go look at the fire? So,
dude, this thing is bananas.
Many of you saw, unless you've been living under a rock for the last few years, or the last year, there were some heartbreaking and tragic fires in California last year. And this 40 comes from one of those fires. So it's kind of a little bit different than the rest of the cruisers in the museum. Most of them are shiny and beautiful and pristine and original. And then you have this one in the background, and that is an FJ40 that survived, well, it didn't survive, that endured a massive wildfire. So you can see just how much damage and how powerful, how raw fire is and what it does to a vehicle there. So maybe go do some zoom ins on that.
Okay.
Because that is one of the newer
This thing is wild.
It's worth seeing up close.
Sorry, I'm not a camera guy, so sorry if you're about to throw up, guys.
Like, check out the leaf springs here, just with the sheer force and the heat this thing endured, what it did to the entire vehicle.
I think the most amazing thing to me are the headlights. It kind of like makes it feel like the Sporty is crying.
Oh, it is crying.
Oh,
Hitter patter.
I melted. Okay, well, we should probably get off of this.
Why don't you just do a big wide zoom over here, just so they get a little wet the appetite of
Okay,
some of the
yeah,
other cool
yeah,
vehicles here.
I'm with you on that. There's a fire truck here. Ooh.
Couple mega cruisers. So if you've never seen a mega cruiser, here's your opportunity to see a very rare civilian model. Very few of those that were ever made. And then slightly more popular, but still very rare, is a military version.
Heck yeah.
Cool. Any other questions before we go? Could be about the cruisers here, or we're here to talk about Cruise Moab, so that'd be even better if you have a Cruise Moab question.
Yep. I think we've hit all the questions.
Okay,
we've got some folks logging off, so
all right.
That's good.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a ton, guys.
We look forward to seeing you in Moab.
See you in Moab. Now I gotta here, hold this.
Gotta figure out how to turn it off. Here's Jackson learning how to turn it off.
End stream.